Hello everyone and welcome to The Fields. My sponsor this episode is 314 Garden Supply in Florissant, Missouri. Whatever your gardening style, anything grows at 314 Gardening Supply. Do you garden in a raised bed? 314 has the organic and living soil that you need. Do you prefer to grow hydroponically? 314 has the mediums and nutrients you need. No matter your style, Mary and her team at 314 Garden Supply offer the knowledge, the products, and the classes to get you gardening with vigor. 314 Gardening Supply in Florissant, Missouri. Here to help you discover your green thumb. My guest today is the Chief Cultivation Officer for Vertical Cannabis in Kansas City, Missouri, Ivan Cartagena. Ivan, thank you so much for being a guest on The Fields.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Was the trip okay? No problems?
No problems at all. It was just a great trip.
That's what I like to hear. Let's dive right in. You've had a very interesting journey both in cannabis and your personal life. Who is the first person that really shared cannabis knowledge with you?
That's going to be my dad, man. My father was the first person ever to actually see cannabis as something that could change my life and that I actually should pursue, and therefore I'm here.
At what age did he introduce you to the plant?
I was young, very young.
Very young? And where was this?
This was in Puerto Rico.
That has to be an incredible climate to grow cannabis in.
It is an incredible climate to grow cannabis. Some of the best cannabis I've ever tried actually was grown there. I mean, it's the tropics.
What kind of method did you use? Was it just drop a seed in the ground?
No, it's never been like that, to be honest with you. We've always tried to, do the best for the plant. So since I started back in the day, it's always been like the first thing I ever did was like organics, So it was kind of like learning to grow this plant without causing any harm to the actual environment. That's the first thing I ever did.
Were there any kind of amendments or anything that went along with that organic style?
Yeah, I mean, a lot, things like kelp. We was using a lot of kelp and stuff like that at the time. Fish mold and a bunch of other things that we would basically make ourselves at some times, or some others are already pre-made, but they're like organic.
Now, your father was a mentor you in more than one ways of just cannabis, but in the cannabis arena, who are some people that you really look up to?
There's many. I mean, to get to a point, right, like where you really love cannabis, you have to learn from a lot of people, and you really have to learn cannabis to love it. So I've learned from a lot of people, different people like Jerome, was good. That guy taught me a lot of what I know. And
Jerome?
Yes, he's a great grower from California, has been with me, many parts of my journey, and he's a great guy. So as, my podfather, as I call him, the guy at Insane Seeds, this guy has, through the years, he just gave me a wealth of knowledge that I cannot get anywhere else, and he's never held anything back on me, so I'm super, super proud of having, such a great relationship with him.
What's his name, and what kind of knowledge did he pass on to you?
I don't know if I want to mention his name, but the type of knowledge he passed to me is incredible. I mean, everything from who to grow and why, to what to grow and when to do certain things. So back in the day, a lot of people didn't really understand, things like breeders and stuff like that. Nowadays, we all do. And he was one of the first ones to really say like, hey, there's some breeders out there that are really, worthy of our attention. And thankfully, that's the people that I've always been growing. That's like the type of breeder that I've always been using. So now that this is going more mainstream, I have some really cool relationships thanks to him.
Are there any people that you were mentoring, given that so much knowledge has been passed along to you?
Of course. I mean, it's kind of like a cycle, right? You have to keep a cycle, and it has to keep going. So we've been able to do many, many things, and one of them is actually teaching others. We love teaching others. I have right now my director of cultivation, John, and his assistant, Corbin. They are both two of my best friends and two of the best people I've ever met. I cannot tell you how much they have learned from me. And then, we have other people from the actual culture who always loved weed and wanted to learn how to grow weed. So they, contacted me through Instagram, DM'd me, and I basically just taught them how to do it. And I told them what I do, how I did it. And if you want to grow salts, I'll teach you to grow salts. If you want to grow things like organics, I can teach you to grow organics as well. So I just love passing it back.
Is there any method of growing that you were unfamiliar with?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's methods, that I probably don't even know exist out there. All growers have like many different ways of expressing their plants. So not one grower is going to know everything. At least I would hope so. Um, but to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure there's someone out there growing in a way I have no clue, have never heard of, and it's completely unique.
The growing skills that you acquired from your father and when you were living on Puerto Rico, how did you incorporate those into your life once you made it to the mainland?
To be honest with you, almost not at all, because so by the time my dad, I moved on my own and did my own thing, I was growing in a completely different way. I had my own, favoritisms, and I thought I could do it better, maybe. So I just did it my own way. So not at all, to be honest with you.
So there's an Ivan Cartagena method out there that people can learn?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it's kind of like basic knowledge of the plant and what to do and not to do at certain times, right? We're very by the timing of the plant, so we allow the plant to actually, have her own time. We're not pressuring her to be anything, we're just letting her be. So the first thing we actually do is kind of like just allow the plant to actually grow and do her own thing, right? So does that mean... I wouldn't call it my own, right? But I do know that every single one strain we grow has their own SOP and will basically be treated in their own way so that, they are expressed to the maximum.
So when you are beginning to grow, where does it start? With the growing medium, the environment?
No, not really. To me, it starts with genetics. I mean, you can have like the best environment, you can have the best medium and the best knowledge, but if your genetics are not really the best and are not up to par, more than likely you're not going to have a great product. I've seen great genetics do incredible in very bad environments, and I've seen incredible genetics do very bad in good environments. But I've also seen very, very bad genetics grown in incredible environments by incredible growers that basically never amounted to anything.
What kind of knowledge do you put into choosing those genetics with the variety of seeds available from people around the world? It's almost like you're taking it on face value that they say this is going to grow this way.
Right. That's why we go back to just being with the right people. And that's something that Insane Seeds have just killed it with me. It's just, I have filtered all of the bad and gone straight to the good. So I never had to go into like this weird, pheno hunt with a bunch of like bad breeders that have a bunch of fake stuff. Like to me, it was like from the get-go, I went to the right people. So it's a lot easier to me, it's a lot easier.
Now you mentioned phenotype. That's a term that people that go to dispensaries may have heard used from time to time, but there are two others that usually accompany it, a genotype and a chemotype. Can you explain the differences between the three?
Right. So a phenotype, we're just going to make it very simple. A phenotype is how it's going to look. Your genotype is the genetical, background of it, is the genetical type of it. And then your chemotype is the chemical structure of that plant. And basically, how the THC and CBD and all of those values amount to.
So when you are pheno-hunting for something, what is it that you are looking for?
So what we're really looking for when we are pheno-hunting is the phenotype, but also the chemotype, in a way, right? Because the phenotype is going to be kind of like how it looks. How cannabis looks can be a big deal nowadays, right? Because if you have a plant that smells great but doesn't look the part, a lot of people will put it apart. So we nowadays are kind of like looking for, it has to check all the boxes. It has to look right. It has to smell right. It has to taste right. So, we're basically constantly looking for the best, and it has to check all boxes.
So is indica, sativa, and hybrid pretty much marketing terms? I mean, do they have much value these days?
Not really. Not anymore. So the thing is, there's going to be many strains out there that people will call a sativa, but then to somebody else, it just causes a completely different, effect, because just how you metabolize different things alone can make a difference on how weed impacts you, right? So I don't think it's the right way to go about it.
What do you think is the right way?
I think looking at the terpenes and what those terpenes are actually going to do for you and how those react to you is a much smarter way of consuming cannabis. Is kind of like getting to know yourself. You have to get to you have to get intimate with cannabis if you want to really learn cannabis, right? And you have to learn about yourself to say like, okay, myrcene might help me this way and linalool this way. This is what the web says, but this is what my body says, right? So it's going to be a much easier experience once you know yourself, because you can go into the dispensary, you don't need any help anymore. You know exactly what you're looking for, so you can tailor to yourself the experience you're looking for.
So people should be focusing on the chemotype, not so much on the phenotype?
Yes. I mean, phenotype is just probably, something that we adopted just to call it something, like when we're pheno-hunting. And I mean, I use the term myself because that's really what we're doing. But the chemotype is really like the important part of that, right? Because I mean, let's say you have a Garipay jealousy that looks incredible and number 7 has a higher amount of linalool, that's what you need, than number 6, right? Well, then the phenotype is not as important as the chemotype then, right? But, to each his own.
How would you say nurturing a plant from seed is different from nurturing a clone?
To me, there's quite some difference, because when you have a clone, you kind of have already a living plant, as when you have a seed, you have to take care of it in a different way, right? You have to pop it. So that's the first thing. And a lot of people do it in many different methods. It's nerve-wracking, I mean, you don't know how many of them are going to survive, and you really never know how many of them are really going to pop, right? If you have a good breeder, more than likely it's going to be 10 out of 10. If you don't have a good breeder, more than likely it's not going to be a 10 out of 10, right? So that's how they are kind of different. One of them is a little bit more delicate to say, because once you have your seedling in your soil or medium, it's going to be very, very delicate compared to a clone, which is still delicate, but a lot sturdier than a seedling, right? So that's that. And then you have, a clone, you know exactly what you have. So once you're cutting it, you more than likely know exactly what you're supposed to do if you're doing things right. You're keeping your notes of what did she like? Was it a different temperature? Did I have the right temperature for her? Was she showing any deficiencies based on, just your environments? So if you're taking all of those notes, then your cloning should be very easy, because you already know exactly what to do with that specific strain, right? Now, if you're doing something like a seedling, you really don't know. So it's kind of like you have to experiment with it, and, every single one plant, it's like a different plant. So they have their personalities and different, like, nuances. So you have to learn from the get-go, That's how I think they're different.
Now, people may have heard of the growing method Sea of Green, which was sort of invented back during prohibitive times to maximize the amount of space in a small area. But some people sort of bring that into a larger version. Is that kind of what you're doing down in Vertical, or what other people are doing?
Yes, in a way, yes. We do use a Sea of Green method, not for the same uses that I believe I read before. I guess it was for hiding it. Nowadays, we use it actually just to allow the plants to get more, PPFD, so they grow a little bit bigger. And we actually do use a method of green, basically, Sea of Green.
How collaborative have you found the cannabis industry to be? I mean, are you working with other geneticists for other companies and saying, let's create something together?
To me, collabing has been pretty easy. I mean, it's been awesome. To be honest with you, I think cannabis, it's all about like growing together in the culture, right? It's kind of like a way of people from the culture to express ourselves and kind of like talk to each other, get to know each other. So going, by that, it's been very easy, because I mean, every time we go talk to one of them, it's like talking to a friend, right? We're basically just here for the same reasons, and we've had a pretty similar story and come up. So many of us, as soon as we get to know each other, we try our products. That's the first step, right? Because the first thing is you have to respect my product, I have to respect yours. And once we actually, understand that both of us are doing it for the same reason, and it's the right reason, we just take off, and it's like super easy. I don't know if that's going to be, maybe like the same experience for everybody else, but that's at least what I can say from it.
Do you guys say, let's try growing this in one medium this time and growing it in a different medium the different way another time?
Not really. So we have in the works maybe a collab with a big guy that I love and admire. He's into organics, so he's the first person that I'm kind of thinking like, okay, maybe we can do something where we would change the medium and do something completely organic for his plants, because he's a big breeder and I really believe in his healing potential. So I really want to do something with him. Skage Green Group and Michael Fang, he's the best. Love you, bro. So I hope we're going to be doing that soon, and that's maybe the only way I would actually venture into something else within, our current setup.
How do you select what cultivars to grow? We may have touched on this a little bit when you were talking about selecting genetics, but I know you said you got to trust the people, you have to work on them, but really, what does your gut tell you when you look at something and say, this is good enough to put in vertical packaging?
Like everybody else, I might be kind of biased, right? But I go by flavor and just looks and smell, right? It's just like the boxes. Let's go back to the boxes, right? Weed to us, it's kind of like it has to be almost perfect in a way. It must, if it's going to be green, I want that green to be very vivid and just beautiful. If it has purple, I want those purples to be incredible, right? So we are going to choose something that has the colors, the structure, the flavor. But we also introduce other people into our pheno hunts because, once again, I may be biased, right? Everyone loves like a specific type of flavor. To me, it's beta-caryophyllene. Once you give me something with beta-caryophyllene, so automatically to me, it's going to be super easy to choose that. So I bring other people that I really trust a lot and admire many times to just help me choose what we think collectively is the new thing, right? What's new? What flavor do we have? Let's say this pheno of potato runs tastes, exactly like this pheno of pave runs in somebody's eyes. Well, we're not going to choose that, right? Because we already have something that tastes very similar to it. So we'll go with a different pheno that has a different flavor, right? So that's how we choose everything.
What do you see the future of cannabis holding?
I see the future of cannabis being incredible, man. I think the future of cannabis holds many of like new entrepreneurs that are going to kill it, and like, a wave of young people that back in the day were not even respected, right? Nowadays, the same people that were called stoners or idiots back in the day are the ones actually telling all the same people, like, this is how you do it in my industry, and the same stoner is now your boss, So that's how I see it nowadays. It's kind of like, it's going to be a shift. It's going to be a cultural shift. I think it's going to help many people, get into a place they never thought they could. And I see the future of cannabis being incredible.
Are there any myths about cannabis that you'd like busted?
Yes, the THC percentages. A lot of people think that THC percentage is actually a thing. And I would say you should actually try other things and go to your terpenes and stuff like that and actually get to know yourself so that you can medicate in a way that's more efficient and helpful for yourself.
How important for you is climate uniformity?
Very important. I mean, if you have, if your climate is all crazy all over, you're going to have many different expressions based on the microclimates that are going to be created inside your own garden. So it's very important to be, uniform as you can, because of course you're always going to have different spots that, heat because of the light themselves, they have hot spots, and then you have other things like humidity that will be created under the plant and then at the top. So there's many different microclimates, and the better you keep the whole thing, at the same pace, the better results you're going to have, because then you don't have 20 different things and 20 different results inside the same room.
What can those microclimates do to the plants in that microclimate?
A lot. I mean, if you have, let's say, one single plant, right, that's not happy enough because there's too much humidity, might be a little bit too much light. Well, that one plant is going to look very different than the rest, right? It may not be one single plant, it may be probably 4 or 5. Then the grower goes and thinks like, oh my God, maybe I have, a deficiency or something. As soon as they try fixing that, well, the whole garden goes down now because it was just a simple microclimate problem you had that you all of a sudden made, the whole garden's problem.
What other problems do you see growers having?
there's, growers nowadays are doing things as good as they can, right? But I see a lot of people just frying their plants. They just, they want to feed their plants at 4AC like they hear us do or something like that, and they don't understand like how to get there. So the first thing they do is like, okay, we're just going to put this plant here. I'm going to raise this thing to 4AC and it's going to work. It's not
4AC?
4AC, that's the electrical conductivity. So basically it's just, how many nutrients you really have in the water. 4AC is kind of considered high, or maybe on the higher spectrum. So, you can get yourself into trouble a lot quicker when you're feeding at those higher, concentrations. So that's something I see a lot. Me personally, I feed at 4AC, right? But when you walk into our garden, you don't see anything burnt, you don't see any problems, and you see what you're supposed to. You can actually feed at probably a lower EC and get results that are very similar. Without burning your plants, you have to learn how to get up there. It's not like from the get-go, like, hey, let's just throw these nutrients in the water. 4AC is what everyone says, so it's going to be okay. People need to, cut down on that.
How have things changed down at Vertical now that adult use is a reality?
It's crazy. I mean, it was kind of like more normal back in the day, let's say, where you had a smaller amount of patients and people were kind of like very relaxed. Nowadays, there's like harvest. In the foreseeable future, all of our product is sold. So it's crazy.
Does this mean you're,
a lot?
because of the volume of people that you're having down at the dispensary and the demand for your product, are you having to grow cultivars now that crop out quicker to meet the demand?
No. So that basically would just lower the genetical pool for, every patient and everyone who's like a true just cannabis lover. We don't want to do that. We actually want to bring like the real culture of cannabis into like the industry, right? So we don't want to separate, the real connoisseur to the regular consumer that just wants to get high. So I would never just, grow this or that because it'll just make more money. That's not our business model. It's kind of different. So we'd rather just do everything right. We'd rather give you a product that we're very proud of, and hopefully, that'll bring your business back to us.
That's going to do it for another episode of The Fields. Many thanks to our guest, the Chief Cultivation Officer for Vertical Cannabis in Kansas City, Mr. Ivan Cartagena. And my thanks to all of you out there for watching and listening. My name is Jeff Rouse. We'll see you next time.